The pen trembled in Elena's calloused hands as she stared at the elegant contract spread across the mahogany desk. The paper was so pristine, so expensive-looking, that she was afraid her work-worn fingers might soil it. Behind her, the grandfather clock in Marcus Ashford's study ticked like a countdown to destiny. "Is something wrong, Miss Reyes?" Marcus's voice was smooth as aged whiskey, but there was an edge beneath it, impatience barely concealed behind practiced courtesy. Elena looked up at the man who could change her life. Marcus Ashford stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, backlit by the glittering Manhattan skyline. At 42, he was devastatingly handsome in that cold, calculated way. Steel-grey eyes, sharp jawline, a body that spoke of expensive gym memberships and personal trainers. Everything about him screamed power and control. "No, sir. I want to make sure I understand everything." Her accent thickened when she was nervous, rolling her R's, stumbling over certain words. She hated how small her voice sounded in this cathedral of wealth. Marcus crossed the room in 3 purposeful strides. The scent of his cologne, something that probably cost more than her monthly rent, filled her senses. He leaned over her shoulder, and she could feel the heat radiating from his body, so close yet impossibly distant. "It's quite simple, Elena. May I call you Elena?" He didn't wait for her answer. "You'll work as my private housekeeper. Room and board included in my residence. Salary of $200,000 per year." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. $200,000. The number danced in her mind like a promise from heaven. That was more money than she'd seen in her entire 30 years of life. More than her mother had earned in 2 decades of breaking her back in factories and restaurants. Enough to finally pay for Mama's treatments, to bring her little sister Sophia over from Guatemala, to stop living paycheck to paycheck in that roach-infested studio apartment in Queens. That's very generous, Mr. Ashford." Her eyes scanned the first page again, drinking in words like comprehensive benefits, housing provided, annual bonuses. "I believe in compensating excellent work appropriately," Marcus said, returning to his position by the window. "Oh, your references were impeccable. Mrs. Chen spoke very highly of your dedication, your discretion, your attention to detail." Eleanor felt a flush of pride. Mrs. Chen had been her employer for 3 years before retiring to Florida. The elderly woman had treated her like family, had cried when they said goodbye. "However," Marcus continued, his tone shifting subtly, "this position requires absolute commitment. I'm a very private person, Elena. I need someone I can trust completely, someone who understands that what happens in my home stays in my home. That's why the contract is so comprehensive." Something in his pause made Elena's stomach flutter with unease. She flipped to the 2nd page, then the 3rd. The legal language grew denser, more complex. Her English was good, but these words seemed designed to confuse. "Mr. Ashford, it says here something about exclusive service agreement and behavioral compliance clauses. What does that standard confidentiality provisions?" he interrupted smoothly. "You'll be living in my home, Elena. You'll see how I conduct my business, who I meet with, how I live. I simply need assurance that you won't share these details with the press, with competitors, with anyone. Surely you understand." She nodded slowly. That made sense. Rich people were paranoid about their privacy. She'd heard stories from other housekeepers about celebrities and executives who made their staff sign NDAs, and this part about adherence to household protocols and mandatory participation in required activities. Marcus smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I run my home on a very specific schedule, Elena. I expect meals at certain times, the house maintained in a particular way. Some employers are flexible, I am not, but for $200,000 a year, I believe that's reasonable, don't you?" When he put it that way, how could she argue? Eleanor thought of her mother's medical bills stacking up like tombstones. She thought of Sophia. Brilliant 16-year-old Sophia wasting away in a village with no future. She thought of the electricity bill she couldn't pay last month, the collection notices, the constant weight of poverty crushing her spirit day after day. "I understand, Mr. Ashford. Excellent." He produced a fountain pen from his jacket pocket, probably worth more than her car. "Then we have an agreement?" Eleanor took the pen. It was heavy, solid, foreign in her grip. She flipped to the final page where a signature line waited. The contract was 12 pages long. 12 pages of dense legal text, Clauses within clauses, subsections and addendums. Her eyes ached from trying to pass it all. "Mr. Ashford, could I perhaps take this home? Have a lawyer look at it? Just to—" "Unfortunately, no." His voice hardened almost imperceptibly. "I have 3 other candidates waiting, Elena. Excellent candidates. I'm offering you this position because Mrs. Chen spoke so highly of you, but I need someone who can start immediately. Tomorrow, in fact. If you're not interested, I understand, but I need to know now." The clock ticked. The city glittered behind him like a kingdom she could never enter, unless she signed. Tomorrow, she could start tomorrow. The agency would deposit her first paycheck within 2 weeks. She could wire money to Guatemala by next month. Mama could see the specialist. Sophia could apply to universities. Everything could change. With a hand that no longer trembled, Elena signed her name in flowing cursive, Elena Maria Reyes. Marcus's smile widened, and for just a fraction of a second, something flickered in his eyes. Triumph? Satisfaction? It vanished too quickly for her to be sure. "Welcome to your new life, Elena." He took the contract, folding it carefully and placing it in his desk drawer. "I'll have my driver take you home to collect your belongings. He'll bring you back this evening. Your room is already prepared. This evening. I thought I'd start tomorrow." "The contract begins upon signature," Marcus said, his tone leaving no room for discussion. "You're my employee now, Elena, and I need you here tonight." As the door closed behind her and she followed Marcus's assistant through the labyrinthine penthouse, Eleanor felt a strange sensation creeping up her spine, like the moment before a door slams shut forever. She shook it off. This was opportunity. This was salvation. This was everything she'd prayed for. She never went back to the desk. She never reread the contract. She never saw the clauses buried in Section 7, subsection D, paragraph 4, written in slightly smaller font than the rest. Employee agrees to absolute obedience in all matters domestic and personal. Employee relinquishes right to unauthorized communication, departure from premises without permission, or termination of contract except under conditions determined solely by employer. Employee acknowledges that failure to comply with any provision may result in legal action, including but not limited to financial penalties, criminal charges for breach of contract, and deportation proceedings where applicable. That night, as Elena unpacked her few belongings in a bedroom larger than her entire apartment, Marcus stood in his study holding her contract. He traced her signature with one finger, a smile playing at his lips. "Perfect," he whispered to the empty room. "Absolutely perfect." Outside, the city glittered with false promises, and Elena Maria Reyes had no idea that she had just signed away her freedom. Eleanor woke to unfamiliar silence. For the first time in years, there were no sirens wailing through Queens, no neighbors arguing through paper-thin walls, no garbage trucks grinding at dawn. Just silence, deep and suffocating, like being buried in velvet. Her room was enormous, a bedroom suite larger than any apartment she'd ever lived in. The bed was a cloud of Egyptian cotton and silk pillows. The ensuite bathroom had heated floors and a rainfall shower that could fit 4 people. Everything gleamed with the kind of cleanliness that only existed when someone else did the cleaning. The irony wasn't lost on her. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Before she could respond, the door opened and a woman entered, thin as a whisper, somewhere between 40 and 60, with hollow eyes that had forgotten how to show emotion. "Good morning. I'm Margaret. Senior household staff." Her accent was British, clipped and proper. She held a uniform on a hanger, a black dress with a white apron, like something from a period drama. "Mr. Ashford expects you downstairs in 15 minutes. Breakfast is at 7 sharp. You're late." Elena glanced at the clock. 6:47 a.m., but it's not 7 yet. You should be ready and waiting by 6:55. Margaret's tone was ice. "Mr. Ashford doesn't tolerate tardiness. First rule, be punctual. Second rule, be invisible. Third rule, never, ever question him." She laid the uniform on the bed and turned to leave. "Wait," Elena called. "Margaret, how long have you worked here?" The older woman paused in the doorway. For a moment, something flickered across her face. Fear, warning. Then it vanished behind her professional mask. 12 years, she said quietly. "Don't make my mistakes, girl. Do exactly as you're told." The door clicked shut, and Elena was alone with the uniform and a growing sense of dread. The dining room could have hosted a state dinner. Marcus sat at the head of a table that stretched like a landing strip, reading the Wall Street Journal with his breakfast: poached eggs, smoked salmon, fresh-pressed green juice. He didn't look up when Elena entered. "You're 2 minutes late," he said casually, turning a page. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ashford." Margaret said. "I don't care what Margaret said. I care that you're late." Now he looked at her, those steel-grey eyes assessing her like merchandise. "The uniform fits well, good." Eleanor felt suddenly exposed, though the dress was modest, professional. The way he looked at her made her skin crawl. "Your duties are listed in the manual Margaret will provide. You'll clean the penthouse daily, all 15 rooms. You'll prepare my meals according to the menu plan. You'll manage my personal schedule, run my errands, and be available whenever I require assistance. Of course, Mr. Ashford, I have 3 rules beyond what Margaret mentioned." He set down his paper, giving her his full attention. 1. You don't leave this penthouse without my explicit permission. 2. You don't use any phone, computer, or communication device except the house phone for approved purposes. 3. You speak to no one about your work here. Not family, not friends, not other staff. Is that clear? Eleanor's mouth went dry. "Mr. Ashford, I understand confidentiality, but I need to call my mother. She's ill and I promised I'd check on her daily. You may call her once weekly. On Sundays on the house phone, with me present to ensure you're not discussing anything inappropriate. With you present." The words came out sharper than she intended. Marcus's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He stood slowly, crossing the distance between them with deliberate steps. Elena forced herself not to retreat. "Elena," he said softly, dangerously, "you signed a contract. Did you read Section 7? Her mind raced, trying to remember the blur of legal text. There was a lot of... Section 7 stipulates absolute compliance with household rules. It also stipulates that breach of contract results in immediate legal action." He was close enough now that she could see the gold flecks in his grey eyes. "I could sue you for every penny you'll ever make. I could have you arrested for theft, and believe me, with my lawyers and your immigration status, I could make it stick. I could destroy your life and your family's future with one phone call." Elena's knees felt weak. "Immigration status? I'm a legal resident, Mr. Ashford. I have my green card. Do you?" He smiled coldly. "How long does it take to investigate someone? To find irregularities in paperwork? To discover that your sister's visa application contains false information?" "Oh yes, Elena. I know about Sophia. I know everything about you." "That's due diligence." The blood drained from her face. Sophia's application. The visa lawyer they'd used had been cheap, desperate. Had he cut corners? Made mistakes? She'd never thought to verify. "I see you understand now," Marcus said, returning to his breakfast. "I'm not a cruel man, Elena. I'm simply a man who values obedience. Follow the rules, do your job, and you'll be very well compensated. Resist, and you'll discover exactly how comprehensive that contract really is. Now the dishes need washing. The kitchen is through there." Eleanor stood frozen, her dreams of salvation crystallizing into a nightmare. The days blurred together in a haze of endless work. Elena cleaned rooms that never seemed to get dirty. She prepared elaborate meals that Marcus barely touched. She organized closets full of clothes worth more than houses. And every night, she was too exhausted to think, too frightened to rebel. Margaret moved through the penthouse like a ghost, speaking only when necessary. Eleanor tried several times to befriend her, to understand how she'd survived 12 years in this gilded prison. But the older woman remained distant, haunted. On the 5th night, Elena woke to sounds from downstairs. Voices, music, laughter with sharp edges. She crept to her door and opened it a crack. The penthouse was transformed. Dozens of people in expensive clothes filled the living room. Waiters circulated with champagne. Hand Marcus held court in the center, his arm around a stunning blonde woman who gazed at him with adoration. Elena felt a strange twist in her chest that she refused to name as jealousy. "Ah, Elena." Marcus spotted her. His voice was warm, charming, completely different from the cold master she'd come to fear. "Come down, please. I want to introduce you." She descended the stairs in her pajamas, acutely aware of every eye turning toward her. The blonde woman's expression shifted from adoration to calculation. "Everyone, this is Elena, my new housekeeper," Marcus announced. "Eleanor takes excellent care of me." Don't you, Elena? The way he said it, the way he looked at her, sent a wave of whispers through the crowd. The implication was clear, deliberate, cruel. Yes, Mr. Ashford, she managed, her face burning. Good girl. He dismissed her with a wave. We'll need more champagne and clean glasses. As Elena fled to the kitchen, she heard the blonde woman's voice, sharp with jealousy. Really, Marcus? She's quite pretty for a maid. His laugh followed her. Jealous, Veronica? Don't be. She's just the help. Eleanor gripped the marble counter, fighting tears. Just the help, just property, just a signature on a contract she'd been too desperate to read. That night, after the guests left and she'd cleaned mountains of dishes, Elena tried the penthouse door. Locked. Not just locked, requiring a keycard she didn't have. She tried her phone but found it was gone from her room. She tried the windows but they were sealed shut. Decorative, not meant to open. She was 12 stories above the street in a luxury prison, and no one knew she was trapped. In the morning, Margaret found her sitting on her bedroom floor, still in her uniform, eyes red from crying. I told you, Margaret said softly, sitting beside her. Don't make my mistakes. What mistakes? Elena whispered. What did he do to you? Margaret pulled up her sleeve, revealing a faded scar that circled her wrist like a bracelet. I tried to leave. In year 3, I got as far as the lobby before his security brought me back. He said I'd stolen from him, planted evidence in my room. The police came. I could have been deported, imprisoned, so I came back. I signed a new contract, with even stricter terms. That was 9 years ago. Why don't you just walk away? He can't keep us here. This is America. We have rights, do we? Margaret's laugh was bitter. Did you read your contract, girl? Really read it? You gave him permission to monitor you, to restrict you, to control you. It's all legal, morally wrong, but legal. And even if you went to the police, who would they believe? Immigrant housekeeper, or Marcus Ashford, philanthropist, businessman, pillar of the community? Elena felt the walls closing in. There has to be a way out. Margaret stood, straightening her uniform. There is, survive, obey. Wait for him to tire of you and let you go. Some girls make it out after a few years if they're very, very good. Some girls? How many of us have there been? But Margaret was already gone, leaving Elena with a truth she could no longer deny. She hadn't been hired. She'd been collected. Just another pretty thing for Marcus Ashford to own, and her life, as promised by that contract she'd so eagerly signed, was no longer her own. 3 months passed like 3 years. Elena learned to move silently through the penthouse, to anticipate Marcus's needs before he voiced them, to make herself invisible while remaining constantly available. She learned which of his moods were merely cold and which were dangerous. She learned to sleep lightly, because he might call for her at any hour. 2 a.m. for a glass of water, 4 a.m. because he couldn't find his cufflinks. She learned that resistance was futile. The Sunday phone calls to her mother were torture. 10 minutes on speaker, with Marcus sitting across from her reading his paper. Eleanor had become an expert at coded language, at sounding cheerful while dying inside. Mia, you sound tired. Are you eating enough? Mama's voice was weaker each week. I'm fine, Mama, working hard. The job is good. Very good. She forced brightness into her tone. Did you see the doctor? Yes. The treatment is expensive, but with the money you send... Mama coughed and Elena's heart clenched. I don't know how we'd survive without you, Elena. You're our angel. I love you, Mama. Tell Sophia I love her. I have to go now. So soon? But we haven't... Time's up, Marcus interrupted, ending the call. He looked at Elena with something like amusement. Your mother seems to be improving. Good thing you're here working so hard for her. The cruelty was casual, effortless. He knew exactly how trapped she was, but Elena was learning too. She was learning the patterns of Marcus's life, the secrets hidden in plain sight. She discovered that the locked study on the 3rd floor was where he conducted his private business, meetings with men in dark suits who never smiled. She'd found documents carelessly left on his desk, papers about offshore accounts and shell corporations. She'd overheard phone calls about problematic employees and liability management. And slowly a terrible picture emerged. Marcus Ashford wasn't just a wealthy businessman. He was a predator who used his power to trap vulnerable women, forcing them into servitude while maintaining a veneer of respectability. The contracts were carefully crafted legal weapons. The isolation was systematic. The threats were calculated. He'd done this before. Many times. Margaret had been right about one thing. Other girls had come before Elena. In the back of a storage closet, hidden behind Christmas decorations, Elena found a box of old house phones. 8 of them. 8 different cases. Some pink, some bejeweled, one with a cracked screen. Personal phones confiscated from previous employees. She found photos too. Polaroids of women in the same uniform she wore. 5 different faces, all young, all beautiful, all with the same look of resignation in their eyes. Where were they now? Elena took one photo. A girl who looked barely 20, with scared brown eyes, and hid it in her bra. Evidence, proof. Though of what and for whom, she wasn't sure yet. Everything changed the night Veronica showed up unannounced. Elena was polishing silver in the kitchen when she heard the screaming. She ran to the living room to find Marcus's girlfriend, ex-girlfriend apparently, standing in the foyer, mascara streaming down her face. 3 years, Marcus. 3 years and you're leaving me for that child. That little gold digger? Veronica was magnificent in her fury, all designer clothes and diamond jewelry and righteous rage. Keep your voice down, Marcus said coldly. You're making a scene. I'll make whatever scene I want. I gave you everything. I turned down marriage proposals for you. And now you're tossing me aside like garbage? Elena tried to slip away, but Marcus's voice stopped her. Elena, stay. Pour Veronica some water. She's hysterical. Hysterical. The word men used when women dared to have emotions. As Elena brought the water with trembling hands, Veronica turned her fury on her. This is your fault. You and your innocent act. Do you think you're special? Do you think he actually cares about you? I'm just the housekeeper, ma'am, Elena said quietly. Just the housekeeper, Veronica laughed bitterly. That's what they all say. That's what the last one said too. Before she disappeared, time seemed to stop. Disappeared? Veronica. Marcus's voice was soft, deadly. That's enough. But Veronica was past caring. 3 years of manipulation and control were pouring out of her like poison from a wound. Oh, he doesn't want you to know about Sophia? Pretty little thing from Colombia. She worked here for 6 months before she tried to leave. To run away, Marcus called it theft. The police came. And no one ever saw her again. She returned to her country, Marcus said, his calm cracking. Voluntarily. Did she? Or did she end up like the others? How many have there been, Marcus? How many girls have you trapped in this golden cage? Elena's blood turned to ice. Sophia from Colombia. Sophia from Guatemala. Similar names. Similar circumstances. Similar girl. Elena, go to your room, Marcus ordered. But Elena couldn't move. She was staring at Veronica, at this woman who had suffered her own form of control, who was finally finding her voice. Don't stay here, Veronica said, meeting Elena's eyes. Whatever he's promised you, whatever he's threatened you with, run. Run now before you can't anymore. Marcus moved with terrifying speed. He grabbed Veronica's arm, his fingers digging in so hard she gasped. You need to leave now. Let go of me. Veronica tried to pull away, but he was stronger, dragging her toward the door. Elena, Veronica called out. He's safe! Behind the painting in his study. The combination is... Marcus clamped his hand over her mouth, and for a moment, Elena saw pure violence flash across his face. Then he controlled himself, smoothing back into cold civility as he shoved Veronica into the hallway. If you ever come back here, he said quietly, I'll ruin you. Your family's business, your reputation, everything. We're done, Veronica. Accept it gracefully or accept it painfully. Your choice? The door slammed. The silence was deafening. Marcus turned to Elena, and she saw something new in his eyes, uncertainty. For 3 months he'd had complete control. But now she knew too much. Now she'd seen behind the mask. What Veronica said, he began. I don't want to know, Elena interrupted. Please, Mr. Ashford. I'll forget everything I heard. I'll work harder. I won't cause trouble. She hated how small she sounded, how desperate. But survival required submission, and she wasn't ready to disappear like Sophia had. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled that cold smile she'd come to dread. Of course you will. You're a good girl, Elena, not like the others. But later that night, as Elena lay in her expensive bed in her beautiful prison, she couldn't stop thinking about Veronica's words. The safe behind the painting. The combination. She thought about the Polaroids in the storage closet, the confiscated phones, The disappeared employee, the pattern of control and disposal. She thought about her mother growing weaker, about Sophia, waiting for her promised chance at a better life, about the money she was supposedly earning, money she'd never actually touched, never seen deposited anywhere, money that existed only in Marcus's promises. At 2 a.m., when the penthouse was silent and dark, Elena made a decision. She was done being good, done being obedient, done being trapped. If Marcus Ashford wanted a victim, he'd chosen the wrong woman. Elena Maria Reyes was going to find out what was in that safe, and then she was going to burn his perfect world to the ground. The study was off limits. Marcus had made that clear from day one. It was his sanctuary, his private domain, forbidden to all staff. But rules meant something different now to Elena. She'd spent 3 months learning his patterns. Tuesday nights he worked late at the office. Thursday mornings he went to the gym for 2 hours. Sunday afternoons he had standing lunch reservations at his club. Sunday afternoon, that was her window. Eleanor's hands shook as she approached the study door at 1:15 p.m. Margaret had already left for her half-day off, a privilege earned through years of submission. The penthouse was silent except for her racing heartbeat. The door was locked, but Elena had learned something useful. Rich men were arrogant. Marcus kept a spare key in the kitchen, in a drawer labeled MISC, because he never imagined his staff would dare defy him. The key turned. The door opened, and Elena stepped into the room where Marcus Ashford kept his secrets. The study was masculine, leather-bound, full of expensive things meant to intimidate. But Elena wasn't intimidated anymore. Fear had calcified into something harder, determination. Behind the desk hung an abstract painting, bold slashes of red and black that probably cost more than her childhood home. She lifted it carefully off the wall, revealing a modern safe embedded in the wall. Digital keypad, 10 digits. Veronica had started to say the combination before Marcus silenced her. Think, Elena, think. She tried the obvious. Marcus's birthday wrong. His company's founding year wrong. She had 2 more attempts before the safe locked and triggered an alert. Then she remembered. The night she'd signed the contract, she'd seen a photo on his desk. Marcus with an older man, both in tuxedos. The photo frame had an inscription, Father and Son, 1985. She tried 1985. The safe chimed. The lock disengaged. Inside was a treasure trove of damnation. Contracts, dozens of them. Each one identical to hers. Same clauses, same traps, same pretty lies. The names were different. Sofia Ramirez, Ana Martinez, Katarina Volkov, Li Wei Chen, and more. Each contract had a photo attached. Each woman was young, beautiful, desperate. And each contract had an end date marked in red ink, followed by notes in Marcus's handwriting. Sophia uncooperative. Threatened exposure. Reported 2021. Anna, attempted theft. Pressed charges. Currently serving 18 months. Li Wei grew too attached. Relocated to Los Angeles property. Ongoing. Relocated, deported, imprisoned. These weren't employees. They were victims. Helena photographed everything with trembling hands, using Marcus's own computer camera, since her phone was long gone. She found bank statements showing that the promised salaries were never paid, just small stipends deposited and immediately withdrawn by Marcus himself, forging their signatures. She found immigration documents showing how he'd used ICE as a weapon, reporting his own employees when they became problematic. And then she found the videos. A hidden folder, encrypted, but Marcus had written the password on a sticky note, more arrogance. Inside were hours of security footage from throughout the penthouse, including bedrooms, including bathrooms. Elena felt vomit rise in her throat. Every private moment, every vulnerable second recorded, saved, weaponized. This wasn't just exploitation. This was a systematic operation of abuse and blackmail. She was downloading everything to a thumb drive when she heard it. The elevator ding. The sound of the doors opening. Footsteps in the hallway. Marcus was home early. Elena's mind raced. She shoved the thumb drive in her bra, closed the safe, repositioned the painting. But there was no time to escape the study. The doorknob was turning. She did the only thing she could. She hid behind the heavy curtains, pressing herself against the cold window, barely breathing. Marcus entered, and he wasn't alone. "I appreciate you coming on such short notice, Detective Morrison," Marcus said, his voice warm with false sincerity. "Not a problem, Mr. Ashford. You said it was urgent?" Elena's blood froze. "A detective." He'd brought a detective. Through a gap in the curtains, she saw Marcus settle into his desk chair, while a middle-aged man in a cheap suit sat across from him. "I'm afraid I have a situation with one of my employees," Marcus said. "My housekeeper, Elena Reyes. I've noticed money missing from my desk. Small amounts at first, but increasingly brazen. Yesterday, a Rolex disappeared from my bedroom. Have you confronted her?" The detective asked, pulling out a notepad. "Not yet. I wanted to handle this officially. With her immigration status, I understand these matters can be complicated." The detective nodded knowingly. "You think she might run?" "I think she might do something desperate. For these people, they come here with nothing, and sometimes the temptation is too much." Marcus's tone was regretful, sympathetic, the performance of a generous man betrayed. Elena wanted to scream. This was it. He was framing her, just like he'd framed the others, setting the stage for her destruction. "I'll need to question her," Detective Morrison said. "Is she here now?" "She should be returning from errands shortly." Marcus checked his watch. "She thinks I'm out for the afternoon, so she won't be expecting us. Perhaps we should wait in the living room." They left, and Elena emerged from her hiding place on legs that barely held her. She had maybe 10 minutes before Elena Reyes, thief, became official record. But she had evidence now. Proof of everything Marcus had done. The question was, what would she do with it? She could run. Try to disappear into the city, into the shadows where desperate people hide. But he'd find her. He had resources, connections, a detective in his pocket. And running would abandon every woman who'd come before her, every woman who'd be trapped after. Or she could fight. Elena looked at the computer still glowing on Marcus's desk. She thought of her mother, who taught her that dignity was worth more than safety. She thought of Sophia, who deserved to know her sister was brave. She thought of Sophia and Anna and Li Wei and all the others, whose names she'd never know. Then she opened Marcus's email, attached every file from the thumb drive, and addressed a message to every contact in his address book: business partners, social connections, news media, police departments. Subject line: the truth about Marcus Ashford. Her finger hovered over send. This would destroy him, but it might destroy her too. He'd retaliate with everything he had: lawyers, accusations, deportation threats. She might end up in jail before he did. The system protected men like Marcus, but silence protected them even more. Elena clicked send. Then she walked out of the study, down the hallway, into the living room where Marcus and Detective Morrison waited. "Elena," Marcus said, standing with false warmth. "I'm glad you're here. This is Detective Morrison. He has some questions about—" "I stole your Rolex," Elena interrupted, her voice clear and strong. "I also stole your dignity, your secrets and your power. Check your email, Mr. Ashford. I sent your entire operation, every contract, every victim, every recording, to everyone you know. Your business partners now know you're a predator. Your social circle knows you're a fraud. And the FBI has evidence of your immigration fraud, financial crimes, and surveillance violations." Marcus's face went white, then red. "You have no idea what you've done." "I know exactly what I've done. I've ended this." "Detective," Marcus turned to Morrison, "arrest her." "She's just confessed to exposing a criminal enterprise," Elena finished. "Everything I took is documented in that email, including Detective Morrison's name in your phone as M. Morrison. Useful." The detective's expression shifted from confusion to calculation. He was dirty, but he wasn't stupid. He understood that Elena had just made him radioactive. "Mr. Ashford, perhaps we should discuss this another time," Morrison said, already backing toward the door. "You're not leaving," Marcus roared. But the detective was gone, fleeing the sinking ship. Now it was just Elena and Marcus, the mask finally shattered. "You'll regret this," he said quietly, dangerously. "I will destroy you. You'll be deported. Your family will suffer. Your sister's visa will be revoked. I'll make sure you lose everything." Elena smiled, and it felt like freedom. "You already took everything, Mr. Ashford. What you didn't understand is that I have nothing left to lose. But you're about to lose everything. Your reputation, your business, your freedom. And all because you were too arrogant to believe a maid could outsmart you. I gave you a chance," he screamed, his composure completely shattered. "I offered you money, security, a better life. You offered me a cage and called it a gift. That's what abusers do. They break you slowly, make you grateful for the scraps of kindness between cruelties. But I'm not broken, Marcus. I never was." The elevator dinged. The doors opened to reveal uniformed officers, real officers, not corrupt ones. Behind them, a woman in a FBI jacket. "Marcus Ashford?" the woman said. "I'm Special Agent Chen. We need you to come with us for questioning regarding multiple allegations of labor trafficking, fraud and violations of federal surveillance laws." Marcus looked at Elena one last time. She saw it all in his eyes. The disbelief, the rage, the dawning realization that he'd finally met someone who wouldn't be broken. Someone who'd chosen courage over survival. "You'll never prove anything," he said as they handcuffed him. Your lawyers are currently being questioned about their role in drafting illegal contracts," Agent Chen interrupted. "And we have victims willing to testify. Starting with Sofia Ramirez, who didn't disappear. She's been working with us for 6 months. Elena's knees nearly buckled. Sofia was alive. She was safe. And she'd been fighting back too. As they led Marcus away, he turned at the elevator, his voice venomous. "Your mother, Elena, your sister. I know where they are." "I know people—" "No, you don't," Agent Chen said firmly. "Your assets are frozen, your accounts seized, and your people are abandoning you as we speak. You have no power here anymore." The elevator doors closed on Marcus Ashford, and Elena felt something she hadn't felt in 3 months, hope. The next hours were a blur of interviews, statements, and revelations. Agent Chen explained that the FBI had been investigating Marcus for 2 years after a previous victim came forward. But they needed evidence, the kind of ironclad proof that Elena had just handed them. "You took an enormous risk," Agent Chen said gently. "What you did was incredibly brave, but it could have gone very differently." "I know," Elena said, but doing nothing wasn't an option anymore. Margaret appeared in the late afternoon, summoned by the FBI. When she saw Elena sitting in the living room, free, unbroken, the older woman wept. "I should have fought," Margaret sobbed. "Years ago, I should have fought like you did." "You survived," Elena said, embracing her. "That took courage, too. But now we fight together. You'll testify?" "Everything," Margaret promised. "I'll tell them everything." The story exploded across media within hours. Marcus Ashford, respected businessman and philanthropist, revealed as a modern-day slave trader who'd trapped dozens of immigrant women in domestic servitude. The emails Elena sent had been forwarded, shared, and investigated. His empire was collapsing in real time, but more importantly, the other victims were coming forward. Sofia Ramirez flew in from Florida, where she'd been in witness protection. Li Wei Chen called from Los Angeles. Ana Martinez, released from her unjust prison sentence, stood before cameras and told her story. One by one, the women Marcus had tried to erase were reclaiming their voices. On the 5th day after Marcus's arrest, Ursina's phone rang, a new phone, one she owned. With no one monitoring her calls, Mia, Elena. Her mother's voice was stronger than she'd heard in months. "Mama, are you the FBI?" They came. They explained everything. "Oh, Elena, what you endured. What you risked." "I'm okay, Mama, I'm free. And the money I sent you. The money for your treatment, Marcus stole it all, but the FBI says we'll recover it. His assets will be liquidated to compensate his victims." "I don't care about money," Mama said fiercely. "I care that my daughter is safe. That she was so brave. I learned from you, Mama. You've been brave your whole life." In the background, Elena heard another voice. "Is that Elena? Let me talk to her." "Sofia. Beautiful, brilliant Sofia." They talked for an hour, laughing and crying, making plans for Sofia's legitimate visa application. For their future, that was finally truly theirs. 3 months later, Elena stood in a New York courtroom as Marcus Ashford was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for labor trafficking, fraud, surveillance crimes, and a dozen other charges. His business empire was dismantled. His assets were divided among his victims. His name became synonymous with abuse of power. Veronica was there too, sitting beside Elena. They'd become unlikely friends, 2 women who'd survived Marcus's different forms of control, both learning to reclaim their power. "He looks small," Veronica whispered as Marcus was led away in handcuffs. "He always was," Elena replied. "We were just taught not to see it." After the sentencing, Elena walked out of the courthouse into brilliant autumn sunshine. Reporters swarmed, but she'd learned to navigate media attention. She'd become a voice for trafficking victims, an advocate for labor rights, a symbol of resistance. "Ms. Reyes, what message do you have for other women in similar situations?" Elena thought carefully before answering. "Read the contract. All of it. Ask questions. Trust your instincts. And know that you're stronger than anyone who tries to control you. There's always a way to fight back. It might not be easy, it might not be safe, but you deserve freedom more than they deserve power. What will you do now?" Elena smiled. "I'm going back to school. Social work. Because there are more Marcus Ashfords in the world and more women who need someone to remind them they're not alone." 6 months after that, Elena sat in a tiny apartment in Queens, not luxurious, but hers. Mama was there, recovering steadily with proper treatment. Sophia was enrolled in community college, already talking about law school. Margaret visited weekly, slowly healing from 12 years of trauma, working part-time and rediscovering the woman she'd been before Marcus broke her. On the wall, Elena had framed something unusual, a copy of the contract she'd signed. The contract that had enslaved her. She kept it as a reminder, not of victimhood, but of the moment she'd chosen to fight back. "Why do you keep that terrible thing?" Sophia asked one evening. Elena touched the frame gently. "Because it reminds me that even the worst mistakes can lead to transformation. I signed away my freedom without reading the fine print. That was my fault. But what happened after? Choosing to fight, choosing to expose the truth, choosing courage over fear, that was my choice too. Both are part of my story. You're not angry at yourself for signing it in the first place?" "I was desperate, Sophia. Desperate people make desperate choices. But desperation doesn't equal stupidity, and it certainly doesn't equal consent to abuse. Marcus exploited my desperation. That's his crime, not mine." That night, as Elena lay in her small bed in her small apartment, she thought about the journey from that luxurious penthouse prison to this humble freedom. She thought about the women she'd helped along the way, the others who were still fighting their own battles. She thought about how Marcus had said, "Welcome to your new life," the night she'd signed the contract. He'd been right, just not in the way he'd intended. This was her new life, hard-earned, self-determined, free, and it was so much more beautiful than anything Marcus Ashford could have offered. To epilogue, the lesson in the end. Elena's story became part of a larger movement. Her case led to federal legislation closing loopholes in domestic worker contracts. 12 other women trapped in similar situations were freed. Marcus Ashford's arrest triggered investigations into dozens of other wealthy exploiters who'd used legal contracts as weapons against vulnerable people. But the most important change happened in the hearts of the women who heard Elena's story and recognized their own struggles in it. The women who learned that contracts signed under duress aren't unbreakable, that wealth doesn't equal righteousness, that saying no is a revolutionary act. Elena learned something profound through her ordeal. Power isn't about who has the most money or the best lawyers or the biggest house. Power is about who refuses to be broken. It's about who chooses truth over safety, courage over comfort, justice over survival. She'd signed a contract without reading the fine print, and it had cost her dearly. But in fighting back, she'd written her own contract, a covenant with herself that no one would ever own her again. The fine print of Elena's life now read simply, "I am not for sale. I am not for controlling. I am not a thing to be collected or discarded. I am Elena Maria Reyes, and my life belongs to me, and that was a contract worth signing." Final reflection. The most dangerous traps are the ones that look like opportunities. The most effective chains are the ones we put on ourselves, believing they're ladders to freedom. But here's the truth that Marcus Ashford never understood. Desperation may make you vulnerable, but it doesn't make you weak. And the moment you remember your own worth, the moment you decide that dignity matters more than survival, that's when you become truly unstoppable. Read the fine print. Ask the hard questions. Trust your instincts. And never ever let anyone convince you that their control is your salvation. Your life is yours. It always was and it always will be.